Welcome back to our journey through the cosmic mirror, where the patterns of the heavens reflect the landscapes of our minds. In our first video, we explored how planets represent different aspects of our psyche: Mars as our warrior spirit, Venus as our capacity for love and connection, Mercury as our mental agility, and so on. Our second video investigated how these energies can express at different intensities, sometimes too strong, sometimes too weak, and occasionally in perfect balance. In our third video, we explored the 6 psychological states through which any planetary energy can manifest, from deep deprivation to abundance, from self-consciousness to balanced pride, and from mild dissatisfaction to inner conflict. Today, we're diving deeper into these 6 distinct psychological states, exploring how they color and shape our experience of planetary energies. Think of these states as different types of weather in your inner sky. Just as external weather shapes how we experience the physical world, these psychological states shape how we experience and express different aspects of ourselves. Before we begin this exploration, let's be clear about something important. When we talk about planets being in different states, we're speaking metaphorically. Saturn isn't literally feeling deprived, and Venus isn't actually experiencing self-consciousness. Instead, these are sophisticated metaphors developed by ancient psychological astronomers to describe patterns they observed in human experience. Think of it as an ancient psychological framework dressed in astronomical clothing. Our journey begins with what we might call the foundation states: deep deprivation and mild dissatisfaction. These states represent different levels of challenge in accessing and expressing planetary energies. Let's begin with perhaps the most challenging state: deep deprivation. Imagine a garden in severe drought. The soil still holds potential for growth, but it lacks the fundamental resources needed to manifest that potential. When a planetary energy expresses through this state, we experience a profound inability to access what we need. Consider someone whose Mars, their inner warrior, is experiencing deep deprivation. They might have clear goals and genuine desire for achievement, but lack the basic energy, resources, or support needed to pursue them. It's like trying to run a marathon without having eaten for days. The will might be present, but the fundamental resources are missing. When Jupiter, our capacity for meaning and growth, experiences this state, we might feel spiritually empty, unable to access our usual sense of purpose or understanding. It's not just a crisis of faith, it's a fundamental inability to access the resources needed for meaning-making. This state teaches us about our essential needs. When we recognize deep deprivation, it's a signal to focus on rebuilding foundations before attempting expansion. Like a farmer during drought, we must focus on water conservation and soil maintenance before thinking about new crops. Moving from acute lack to chronic friction, we encounter the state of mild dissatisfaction, a subtler but persistent form of discomfort. Imagine having an itch you can't quite reach or wearing shoes that are slightly too tight. It's not devastating, but it creates a constant, low-level drain on your energy. When Venus expresses through this state, someone might maintain relationships and experience moments of connection, but feel a persistent longing for deeper intimacy. They can function socially, but something always feels slightly off or incomplete. It's like having a beautiful garden with one withered plant that constantly draws your attention. Mercury in this state might manifest as mild but persistent communication difficulties, always feeling slightly misunderstood or unable to express yourself quite as clearly as you'd like. You can get your point across, but it requires more effort than it should. This state teaches us about the difference between acute crisis and chronic challenge. Sometimes, the quiet persistence of mild dissatisfaction can be more challenging to address than obvious problems. It requires subtle adjustment and patient attention rather than dramatic intervention. When we encounter deep deprivation, we're facing a fundamental lack of resources, whether emotional, mental, physical, or spiritual. Like a garden in severe drought, the first priority must be restoring basic resources before attempting any growth. This state often manifests when we're in the habit of pushing too hard for too long, depleting our inner reserves beyond sustainable levels. The key to working with deep deprivation lies in returning to fundamentals. First, we must honestly assess which essential needs aren't being met. This might mean examining our sleep patterns, nutritional intake, emotional support systems, or spiritual practices. Then, rather than attempting quick fixes, we focus on building sustainable ways to meet these needs. This often involves creating new daily routines and support structures that can maintain resource levels even during challenging times. For mild dissatisfaction, the approach shifts to fine-tuning and patient adjustment. Like a musician constantly making tiny adjustments to maintain perfect pitch, we need to develop sensitivity to subtle imbalances in our life. This means creating regular check-in practices where we can honestly evaluate our satisfaction levels in different areas. Rather than making dramatic changes, success with mild dissatisfaction comes through small, consistent adjustments. Think of it like adjusting the temperature of a room. Tiny changes in the thermostat can create significant shifts in comfort over time. This might mean slightly adjusting daily routines, communication patterns, or self-care practices. Moving from our foundation states, we encounter two states that deal with our internal relationship to planetary energies: self-consciousness and inner conflict. These states represent different types of internal friction in expressing planetary energies. The state of self-consciousness manifests as inhibition and perceived inadequacy. Imagine a skilled dancer suddenly becoming acutely aware of everyone watching. Natural grace gives way to awkward self-awareness. This state represents not a lack of capability, but a disruption in our natural expression of it. When Mercury expresses through this state, for instance, someone might have brilliant insights but feel intensely self-conscious about sharing them. The knowledge is there, but self-awareness becomes self-consciousness, disrupting natural expression. It's like a musician who plays beautifully alone, but freezes up before an audience. The Sun in this state might manifest as discomfort with authentic self-expression. You know who you are, but feel uncertain about fully embodying it in the presence of others. It's like having a beautiful singing voice, but only using it in the shower. This state teaches us about the delicate balance between awareness and self-consciousness. While self-awareness can enhance our functioning, excessive self-consciousness disrupts natural flow. Working with this state often involves building gradual comfort with being seen. Moving to perhaps our most complex intermediate state, we encounter inner conflict, representing internal division and competing demands. Imagine a river meeting an obstacle, creating turbulent waters. Energy is present but conflicted in its expression. When the moon, our emotional nature, expresses through this state, we might feel pulled between conflicting emotional needs or responses, like wanting both solitude and connection, or feeling both grief and relief about a situation. It's not about choosing between clear alternatives, but navigating complex, sometimes contradictory needs. Saturn in this state might manifest as conflict between discipline and rebellion, structure and freedom. Part of you knows what needs to be done, while another part resists the limitations this implies. It's like being both the strict teacher and the rebellious student within yourself. This state teaches us about the complexity of human experience and the importance of holding space for seemingly contradictory truths. These intermediate states require sophisticated approaches for effective navigation. Working with self-consciousness requires extraordinary gentleness and patience. Like helping a timid animal learn to trust, we must create safe conditions for natural expression to emerge. This state often manifests when our authentic expression feels threatened or exposed. The journey through self-consciousness begins with creating safe spaces for expression. This might mean journaling privately, practicing skills alone, or sharing initially only with trusted supporters. The key is gradually expanding our comfort zone while maintaining a foundation of safety and support. Developing self-compassion becomes crucial here. Modern psychological research shows that self-compassion often proves more effective than self-esteem in overcoming inhibition and fear. This means learning to treat ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a friend struggling with similar challenges. The psychological parallel to social anxiety and imposter syndrome is particularly relevant here. Research shows that exposure therapy, when done gradually and with support, can help overcome social anxiety. Similarly, working with self-consciousness involves gradually increasing our comfort with being seen while maintaining internal safety. Inner conflict represents perhaps the most sophisticated state to work with. Like navigating complex ocean currents, We must learn to work with rather than against competing internal forces. This state often emerges when different aspects of ourselves hold apparently contradictory needs or desires. Working with inner conflict begins with acknowledgement of all parts of our experience. Rather than trying to resolve the conflict immediately, we first create space to hear all voices within. This parallels internal family systems therapy's approach of acknowledging and working with all parts of the psyche. The art lies in finding ways to honor competing needs while maintaining functionality. This might mean creating time for both social connection and solitude, balancing structure with spontaneity, or finding ways to be both ambitious and content. Modern psychological approaches like dialectical behavior therapy offer valuable tools for holding apparent contradictions. The connection to contemporary work on multiplicity of mind proves particularly relevant. Psychology increasingly recognizes that a healthy psyche contains multiple subpersonalities or parts. Understanding this helps us work more effectively with internal conflict, seeing it not as a problem to solve, but as a complexity to navigate. Our exploration culminates with two states that represent optimal functioning of planetary energies: abundance and balanced pride. These states show us what's possible when planetary energies express freely and authentically. In beautiful contrast to our earlier states, we have abundance, representing natural flow and fulfillment. Imagine a master artist completely absorbed in creation, where everything needed is readily available. There's no strain, no effort to access resources or capabilities. Everything flows naturally. When Jupiter, for instance, expresses through this state, wisdom and understanding flow effortlessly. You're not trying to be wise. Wisdom simply emerges naturally in response to situations. It's like a master gardener who instinctively knows exactly what each plant needs. Venus in abundance creates natural, effortless connection. Relationships flow smoothly. Affection is easily given and received, and there's no strain in maintaining bonds. It's like a perfect spring day where everything naturally supports life and growth. This state teaches us about our natural capacity for flow and fulfillment. It reminds us that strain and effort aren't always necessary. Sometimes things can flow naturally and easily while still being profound and meaningful. The state of balanced pride reflects healthy self-respect and authentic confidence. Imagine a master craftsperson quietly confident in their skill. No need to boast or prove anything. This state represents genuine self-assurance without arrogance. When the sun expresses through this state, we embody genuine self-assurance without needing external validation. It's not about thinking you're better than others. It's about being completely comfortable with who you are. Like a lion resting in the savannah, powerful but not needing to prove it. Mars in this state manifests as confident action without aggression. You can assert yourself and pursue goals while remaining respectful of others' boundaries. It's like a skilled martial artist who knows their capability but feels no need to demonstrate it unnecessarily. This state teaches us about authentic confidence and its distinction from ego-driven pride. It shows us how true self-assurance creates space for others rather than diminishing them. Even optimal states require skillful navigation. Abundant states present their own unique challenges and opportunities. Like perfect weather for harvest, these are times to fully engage while creating resources for future seasons. The art lies in making the most of these periods while maintaining awareness of their temporary nature. During abundance, our first task is full engagement with the opportunities present. This means stepping fully into creative projects, relationships, or personal growth opportunities that arise. Like a farmer making hay while the sun shines, we want to maximize these favorable conditions. Equally important is creating resources for less abundant times. This might mean documenting insights, strengthening supportive relationships, or building systems that can sustain us through challenging periods. Modern flow state research shows that documenting these peak experiences can help us better understand and access them in the future. Balanced pride represents a state of authentic confidence and self-respect. Like a mature tree providing shelter while continuing to grow, this state offers opportunities for both leadership and continued learning. The challenge lies in maintaining genuine confidence while avoiding arrogance. Working with balanced pride involves stepping into leadership roles while remaining open to growth. This might mean mentoring others, sharing expertise, or taking on increased responsibility. The key is maintaining what psychology calls secure, high self-esteem, confidence that doesn't require constant external validation. What's fascinating about this ancient framework is how precisely it aligns with modern psychological research and therapeutic approaches. Let's explore these parallels in depth, seeing how ancient astrological wisdom anticipates many of our contemporary psychological insights. The ancient understanding of deep deprivation finds its modern parallel in burnout and vital exhaustion research. Contemporary psychology recognizes burnout as a three-component syndrome: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced personal accomplishment, precisely mirroring what ancient astrologers observed in deeply deprived planetary states. Modern stress research shows how chronic depletion affects our nervous system, leading to what psychologists call allostatic load, the wear and tear on the body from chronic stress. This perfectly mirrors the ancient understanding of deep deprivation as a fundamental resource deficit that must be addressed at the systemic level. Contemporary trauma theory's emphasis on resource building before processing echoes the ancient wisdom about working with deep deprivation. Just as modern therapists ensure sufficient stabilization before addressing trauma, ancient astrologers understood that deep deprivation requires resource restoration before attempting growth. The ancient concept of mild dissatisfaction beautifully anticipates modern research on hedonic adaptation, our tendency to return to a relatively stable level of happiness despite major positive or negative changes. What ancient astrologers observed as a persistent state of mild discontentment, modern psychology recognizes as a fundamental feature of human psychology. This connects with contemporary concepts of the good enough paradigm in psychology, introduced by D.W. Winnicott. Just as ancient wisdom recognized the chronic but manageable nature of mild dissatisfaction, modern psychology acknowledges that perfect satisfaction isn't the goal. Rather, we aim for good enough functioning while managing inevitable dissatisfactions. Modern research into social anxiety and imposter syndrome provides scientific validation for what ancient astrologers observed in the self-conscious state. Contemporary psychology's understanding of how self-focused attention can disrupt natural functioning exactly parallels ancient observations about how self-consciousness inhibits planetary expression. Recent research on the spotlight effect, our tendency to overestimate how much others notice our behavior, offers a scientific framework for understanding what ancient astrologers observed in self-conscious planetary states. The therapeutic approaches used today, like gradual exposure and cognitive restructuring, mirror ancient wisdom about working with self-conscious states. The ancient understanding of inner conflict finds striking validation in internal family systems therapy and other approaches that recognize the multiplicity of the psyche. What ancient astrologers observed as competing planetary influences, modern psychology understands as different parts of the self, each with valid needs and concerns. Contemporary dialectical behavior therapy's emphasis on holding apparent contradictions mirrors ancient wisdom about navigating inner conflict. The modern recognition that internal conflict often signals complexity rather than pathology echoes ancient understanding of this state as a natural, if challenging, part of human experience. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's research on flow states provides scientific validation for what ancient astrologers observed in abundance states. The conditions he identified for flow, clear goals, immediate feedback, and balance between challenge and skill, parallel ancient descriptions of planetary energies in abundance. Modern positive psychology's research on peak experiences and optimal functioning offers scientific framework for understanding what ancient astrologers observed in abundance states. The contemporary emphasis on documenting and learning from peak experiences mirrors ancient wisdom about working with abundance. Contemporary research distinguishing between secure and fragile self-esteem provides scientific validation for ancient wisdom about balanced pride. What ancient astrologers observed as the difference between authentic confidence and ego-driven pride, modern psychology recognizes in the distinction between secure and defensive high self-esteem. Recent research on authentic pride versus hubristic pride perfectly mirrors ancient understanding of balanced pride states. The modern recognition that genuine self-esteem creates space for others' growth exactly parallels ancient observations about balanced pride's expansive nature. This remarkable alignment between ancient astrological wisdom and modern psychological research suggests that our ancestors possessed sophisticated understanding of human psychology, even if they expressed it through different metaphors. The planetary states framework offers a poetic yet precise language for describing psychological conditions that modern research is only now through scientific method. Understanding these parallels enriches both traditions. Modern psychological research provides scientific validation for ancient wisdom, while ancient frameworks offer rich, metaphorical language for expressing psychological insights. Together, they provide us with a more complete understanding of human psychology and tools for working with our inner states. Understanding these 6 psychological states gives us a sophisticated framework for working with our inner experience. As you move forward from this video, start noticing how different aspects of yourself express through these states. This awareness itself becomes a powerful tool for personal growth and development. Remember, states change like weather in your inner sky. The key isn't to achieve perfect conditions, but to work skillfully with whatever state you're experiencing. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of the cosmic mirror. Until next time, keep looking both up at the stars and within at your own inner sky.